Welcome back to Silent Stories Updates, where real-life tales of determination, justice, and quiet strength come to life. If you're new here, take a deep breath, sit back, and let this story remind you that sometimes peace isn't given, it's built, one decision at a time. Background music fades into a gentle rhythm. The screen transitions to a calm street view. It started every single morning, right as the sun peeked over the rooftops. I'd walk out, coffee in hand, ready to head to work, only to find it again. Karen's shiny silver SUV parked directly across my driveway every single day. At first, I thought it was an honest mistake. I mean, who does that on purpose? So I walked over, knocked on her door, and tried to keep my voice friendly. "Hey, could you please not park in front of my driveway? I've got to leave for work." She smiled that fake, tight-lipped smile and said, "Oh, it's only for a minute. You can wait, can't you?" Then she closed the door in my face. That minute turned into an hour. I was late for work that day, but I brushed it off. Things happen, right? People make mistakes. But when it happened again the next morning, and the next after that, I realized this wasn't a coincidence. This was a message. You see, Karen wasn't just any neighbor, she was the neighbor. The self-appointed queen of the HOA. She didn't run it officially, but she controlled it in every way that mattered. Through gossip, intimidation, and a voice that could cut through walls. She made sure everyone on the street knew their place, except me. I'd just moved in a few months earlier. Fresh start, new job, new home. I wanted peace, a quiet life. But I didn't realize that peace would come with a monthly HOA fee and a daily battle with someone who thought she ran the world. It started small. She complained that my grass was too long, even though it wasn't. Then it was my trash cans being out too early. Then the color of my mailbox supposedly violated community standards. I tried to ignore it. But blocking my driveway every morning? That was the line. One morning, after she did it yet again, I knocked on her door, trying to stay calm. "Karen," I said, "you're blocking my car again. I need to leave." She crossed her arms and smirked. "Maybe if you learn how things work in this neighborhood, people would be more respectful to you." I blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said, "you don't belong here until you prove you can follow the rules." And then she shut the door again. I stood there, speechless. How could someone be so entitled? But I decided then I wouldn't let her push me around. I started documenting everything. Photos, videos, timestamps. Every time her car blocked my driveway, I took a picture. When she left little violation notes on my door, I kept them. When she yelled from across the street about my lawn, I recorded it. I thought if I gathered enough evidence, the HOA would finally take action. When I presented everything at the next HOA meeting, they nodded, pretended to listen, and promised to look into it. But nothing happened. It didn't take long to realize why. Most of the board members were her friends or too afraid to cross her. So there I was, trapped. Every morning, I'd walk out to find her SUV blocking my driveway like clockwork. She'd stand there sometimes, arms folded, watching me as I struggled to pull out. That smug little smile on her face. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was humiliating. I started leaving for work earlier, parking down the block, just to avoid the scene. My stomach would knot every time I heard her voice through the window. My home stopped feeling like home. Then, one Friday evening, I came home late, exhausted, ready to collapse. But there it was again, her SUV, right across my driveway. Only this time, she wasn't home. I called a tow company. They said they couldn't touch it without HOA approval. I called the HOA. They said they couldn't act without a board meeting, which wouldn't happen for another 3 weeks. That was it. The breaking point. I remember standing under that dim porch light, staring at her car, anger boiling up inside me. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. The next morning, I drove to a local landscaping supply yard and ordered something special for massive concrete planters. Each one weighed nearly a ton. Big, solid, beautiful. The kind of thing that says, "This is my property." When I told the delivery guy where I wanted them placed right along the edge of my driveway, he looked at me like I was planning a fortress. You sure about this?" he asked. "Absolutely," I said. By noon, they arrived on a flatbed truck. The neighbors peeked out from their windows as the crew lowered each planter carefully into place, two on each side of the driveway, spaced perfectly to allow my car through, but leaving no room for anyone else to park there. When they finished, the driver wiped his hands and said, "Well, no one's blocking you now." He was right. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I sat by my window, coffee in hand, waiting. Right on cue, Karen came out in her robe, coffee mug clutched in one hand. She froze when she saw the planters, her mouth open, then closed again. She stomped over to the driveway and started shouting, "You can't do this. This is against HOA regulations." I stepped outside calmly. "Actually, it's not," I said, handing her a printout of the city's property line codes. "These are entirely on my land. Perfectly legal." She glared at me, red-faced. "They're ugly. They ruin the neighborhood." "They're staying," I said simply. She tried to move one, gripping the edge and pulling with all her might. It didn't budge. "For tons of solid concrete don't move easily." She pointed at me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Maybe," I said with a smile, "but I'll be able to leave for work on time." She stormed off, slamming her front door so hard the windows rattled. And just like that, my mornings changed. For the first time, I walked outside, started my car, and drove away freely. No blocked driveway, no arguments, just peace. But of course, Karen wasn't done. She filed a formal complaint to the HOA, then another, and another. She claimed the planters were unsightly, a safety hazard, and not in community spirit. The HOA called for a meeting. I showed up, calm and ready. Karen was already there, fuming, waving a stack of papers like she was about to expose the crime of the century. When my turn came to speak, I stood, laid out my evidence, all the photos, the videos, her notes, her car blocking me repeatedly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I just showed the truth. When the board saw it, the room fell silent. One of the members, Greg, a kind older man who lived in the neighborhood for decades, cleared his throat. "Karen," he said gently, "is this all true?" She scoffed. "He's exaggerating. He's trying to make me look bad." Greg looked at her with tired eyes. "No one had to make you look bad. You did that yourself." The board voted unanimously to reject her complaint and issue a formal warning against her for harassment and misuse of HOA influence. Karen was furious. She stormed out of the meeting without another word. The next day, for the first time since I moved in, her SUV wasn't in front of my driveway. It wasn't even on the street. It was parked neatly in her own garage. She didn't speak to me after that. Not once. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood started to feel lighter. Without her constant interference, people began to relax. The block parties returned, the gossip faded, and the HOA actually started focusing on improving things that mattered, like the park, and the sidewalks, and the community center. And those planters? They became something of a legend. People would walk by, nod approvingly, and say, "Nice planters." Some even left small flowers in them when spring came around. They turned from a symbol of frustration into one of peace, strength, and quiet victory. One evening, Greg stopped by with his wife. They brought over a small pot of daisies to add to the planters. He smiled and said, "You know, you taught everyone on this street something important." I laughed. "What's that?" "That standing up for yourself doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it just means planting your boundaries literally." We both laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at home. Because this wasn't just about Karen anymore. It was about reclaiming something bigger, my peace of mind. People like her thrive on control. They want to make others bend, to make them give up their space, their confidence, their calm. But the moment you decide you won't be pushed anymore, that's when everything changes. Those for planters weren't just blocks of concrete. They were boundaries. They were balance. They were proof that strength doesn't have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes it's quiet, immovable, and rooted deeply in self-respect. Months later, as I sat on my porch one evening watching the sunset, I saw Karen drive by. She didn't look at me. She didn't honk. She just kept going. And that was fine by me, because some people are like storms, you can't stop them. But you can build strong enough walls to keep them from flooding your peace. Now, every morning, I walk out, sip my coffee, and smile. My driveway is clear, my heart is light, and my home is finally what it was always meant to be, a sanctuary. So if you've ever had someone in your life like Karen, someone who tries to control, belittle, or bully you, remember this: you don't have to fight fire with fire. Sometimes you just have to build something they can't move. Soft music rises. The screen shows peaceful shots of flowers in the planters, sunlight breaking through trees. This has been another Silent Stories update, where every story reminds us that strength isn't about shouting louder, it's about standing taller. Thank you for watching.